guys, Cody here, and welcome back to some more Napoleon Total War. So today we are in Italian grasslands. This is going to be a 3v3. So the rules for this battle were no artillery, max 5 lights, and let's get right into the army comps. So over here we have Prussia, and I will have the army comps on the screen so you guys can see exactly what everyone is bringing. And as you can tell, he's going to be bringing a large cav force. And then opposing him, we have the Russians. So, looks like a little skirmish engagement is about to begin. We got some melee cavalry coming in, some Cossacks leading the charge for the Russians and charging straight into those Lancers. There are some mounted rifles here. And the Russians definitely do need to keep their range because they do not have the skill in melee combat to win against these Lancers. And you can see that is exactly what he's going to be doing. But the Russian morale not looking too strong right now. And that's just because these Lancers just have a devastating melee charge, and it's definitely going to affect the morale of these Russians. And he's really going to need to do something, either pull back his cavalry or allow his musketeers to push up. He's actually going to be engaging with his Russian Jaegers, trying to shoot these Lancers as they do get into melee combat. But before we go any further there, we have the next Russian army. He's going to be on the far right flank. Against them, we have the French here. They're going to be bringing some very elite troops consisting of 3 old guard units. Taking a look on the far right flank of the battlefield, we have the another French faction. It's going to be holding the right flank, and then facing them we have the Danish. So taking a look back at the battlefield, looks like the Russian cavalry did break. He did manage to pull back a couple of the units, seeing that he was losing that engagement. And he's actually going to catch some of these Lancers off guard as they do charge downhill. And their morale is starting to suffer, same with their numbers, getting pretty low. And looks like these mounted rifles are trying to run away, but they are going to get caught up in the mix. Meanwhile, the rest of the Prussians are going to be taking control of this hill and trying to take the high ground. But would you look at this great cavalry charge here by the Russian player, actually charging into the Prussian Fusiliers. That's going to devastate the morale. You can see there was no reinforcements or troops in reserves to guard these guys, and as a result, these Prussians are just going to get absolutely slaughtered. You see the amount of Prussian musketeers dying, or Fusiliers, excuse me. So with that occurring, it looks like the Prussian player is going to be shifting over some more troops, but a very late response and an excellent cavalry charge here by the Russian player, charging into these musketeers and not allowing them to form a square. And it looks like the next Russian player is going to be forming up his troops. He's got his Russian Jaegers here, and he's going to try and get in on the action. Looks like the French are going to be shifting over some of their units, seeing that the left flank is pretty empty with troops. There are a couple of Russian troops here holding this flank, but other than that, the majority of his forces are on the left flank, and a great shot here by the mounted... Oh. Shesheval taking a brutal beating with that fall. He got one straggler. Will he make it into melee combat, though? It looks like he will. So we have some French cavalry trying to help out the Prussians, but they are getting absolutely slaughtered here. Russian cavalry finally starting to break, losing a lot of guys since they are in square formation. But same with the Lancers. They're getting shot up really bad right now by these Russian troops. But taking a look on the far left flank of the battle, looks like the French player did control the high ground, but he is outranged. So he's either going to have to push into much closer range or fall back and control this hill. And would you look at that, someone has controlled a building. Let's take a look where on the battlefield, and it looks like the French are going to be controlling this little house here and setting up a defensive perimeter around the battlefield. As for the Lancers, they are taking a beating, like I said. Only 1 unit left, they are down to 16 men. So looking at the minimap, red not looking good at all, losing 5 units compared to the blue only losing 1. Russians, though, doing a really good job just outnumbering these Prussians. And that's probably because the Prussian player is in a very, very bad 2v1 scenario. And as a result, it looks like the French are going to be shifting over some troops, trying to help them out. And same with the French. You can see he's going to be shifting over some Shesheval. Got the 6th Regiment, not to mention some Swiss foot. So forming up the lines, we have some more mounted rifles here. Am I saying mounted Jaegers, not mounted rifles. They are not cavalry. But these musketeers, even though they control the high ground, their numbers are dwindling down at a very rapid rate. You can see you got the musketeers firing and the Russian Jaegers, and they are giving a constant stream of lead straight into the faces of these musketeers. Same as over here, down to 70 men. The Russians do control the forest, so that's going to help them out quite a bit. Looks like the Danish are going to be engaging the French here. Voltigeurs do control the forest, but great cavalry charge here by the Russian Uhlans, charging into the Voltigeurs. It seems like the Red are just taking a brutal beating when it comes to light infantry, just not supporting them properly, and it's causing them to lose a lot of guys. You can see the French player did try to lay stakes, but laid them in the wrong direction, so that's not going to help out whatsoever. But luckily there are some Young Guard here, as well as some Dragoons and the 70. They're going to be sent in to try and eliminate this Uhlan threat. Only 9 guys left though, and the Russians did take up a house as well. We got the Semenovsky Life Guards. They're going to be holding this house and keeping up the really well fire rate. Over here, another push by the Russians. This time inching forward, we got a melee engagement of militia and actually breaking the muskets here. So great push here by the Russian player. And it looks like he's going to continue the charge into the next musketeer unit. Meanwhile, the Russians are going to help suppress. On this far right flank though, Russian Jaegers holding very well and depleting a lot of the Swissfoot, not to mention the Chasseurs and the 6th Regiment. So the Swissfoot going to be marching up, trying to get into position, but just taking devastating volleys. A lot of men are dying. It looks like the 6th Regiment's going to be pushed into combat. These guys are pretty elite, so they can do a lot of damage. It looks like a lot of the Swissfoot are trying to return volleys, but as a result, they're taking a lot of losses. Another cavalry charge here by the 70. They did charge in over here. Russians were easily able to counter that with square formation, and they did end up retreating. That pretty much down to half health now. Over here, though, great job by the French player getting within range of the Danish. And that's going to allow him to get a lot of really good volleys in. But they are standing, and that is a huge concern. They need to be crouching down and making themselves a smaller target. So it's going to balance the odds a little bit, but here we go. We got some Dragoons on the run right now. It looks like they came out of hiding in this forest. And maybe once again, another great cavalry charge by the Danish into these French positions. And we will see if he can make it or not. There are some militia in the reserves, but they have some very bad shots, and they're just watching their fellow lights die. They're going to try and get some return volleys off, but not being effective whatsoever, only killing about 6 guys. And these Voltigeurs are definitely feeling the pain of that Danish charge. Over here now, we got the National Guard and some Fusiliers pushing up onto some of the Danish positions. Danish, though, even though they don't have the high ground, they have this forest, not to mention some Grenadiers in the back. Extremely elite units, and they can definitely hold their own against the French troops. Over here, it seems to be a desperate charge by the French into the line infantry, not being effective whatsoever, down to only 1 guy, and those guys do end up breaking. But on this hill, hell is starting to break loose. The Russians are just continuing to charge unit after unit into the Prussian positions, and as a result, a lot of these musketeers are starting to break from the battlefield. As for this skirmish engagement, things are starting to become a little bit more even. The Russians were definitely decimating the French positions at the start, but as the 6th Regiment did enter the combat, the odds are beginning to look a little bit more even. Here we go, we have a cavalry charge now, this time into the Russian Semenovsky Life Guards. If the Prussian player can remove these guys from the battlefield, it's going to allow him to help the morale, but once again, Russians back at it again with this fantastic charge, charging into the Jaegers. And once again, just picking out those weaker targets that are unable to form a square and just capitalizing on it. As for this engagement here with the French against the Danish, things seem to be pretty even at the start. But you see the Danish player not losing many guys whatsoever. And as of right now, it's only the light infantry engaging. So the Danish player really needs to push up the rest of his lines so he gets full firepower. But on this far right flank, even though these guys are National Guard, they are starting to outflank the enemy, and that's going to be very important if he does want to win this flank. So the Danish player definitely needs to watch what he is doing, because as of right now, he's getting outflanked very hard. Over here, this cavalry charge by the Russian player still continuing. Thankfully, there are some musketeers here, but these Russian cavalry units just decimating these lights. Looks like the Russian troops are going to be falling back off the hill, though, seeing that their militia and lines are starting to get a little bit thin. But look at this push here by the French, outflanking the Danish. As a result, he's going to be forced to send over a lot of cavalry. So, National Guard unable to form square. It's going to be very easy for this cavalry to charge in a very massive horde of cavalry. We got the light dragoons coming in first. Even the general's going to get a part of the action. And they're going to be charging into the National Guards. Unable to form square, they're going to definitely face their fate. If the French player was smart, he would be running into this building, but it looks like he's not going to. And as a result, this National Guard unit is going to break very, very soon. Another cavalry charge here. Let's take a look and try to locate the general. He's over here somewhere. I think this is him. Nope. He's somewhere in the mix. But now, the Grenadiers are in combat. They're going to be engaging these National Guard. And the numbers are really starting to dwindle down now. 50 for this unit, 61 for the other. But taking a look at the far left flank of the battlefield, things seem to be pretty similar as they were, just less troops. But still, the 6th Regiment only losing 3 guys. And these Russian Jaegers are taking a beating right now. So this unit, 39 men left, and they were engaging the 6th Regiment. Over here we have a skirmish engagement though. Russian Jaegers up against some Voltigeurs. Russian Jaegers should take this just because they have more men. But the Voltigeurs are a little bit more accurate. So some drawbacks there, but nothing too significant. Over here we have some Jaegers, and they are definitely outnumbered, trying to reload as fast as they can, getting their volleys off towards these Russians, but once again, Russians starting to outflank. And it looks like the enemy, or the blue forces, are starting to overwhelm the positions of the red troops. And as a result, it's going to force a lot of the blue back. Perfect example of this. Getting a little bit desperate for the French, seeing that their numbers are getting very low. Even though these guys might be out of ammo, just shows you how desperate he is in trying to break these Danish lines. So we have only 2 Voltigeur units, each down to about 17 or 18 men, so not much at all, and these Danish troops are holding out fantastically. And another big cavalry push here by the Danish player. This time though, we got some Fusiliers, some proper line infantry that can form square, and hopefully that can change the tide of the battle. Not to mention we have some Old Guard holding the right flank. So with only a couple units left on this far right flank, the Danish are really starting to outmaneuver the French. French numbers are getting pretty low, but they were pretty low to begin with, seeing that they did bring a lot of elite troops. As you can tell, there are going to be 3 Young Guard units holding this forest. As for on the far left flank, things are still similar as they were. 6th Regiment now down to 71, and the Russians just not willing to rout whatsoever. Morale very good under what circumstances they are being faced, but here goes the Old Guard. This is going to be a huge shift in the battle. These guys are extremely elite, and they can definitely cause a lot of morale shock to an enemy unit. Over here, we have a melee engagement. Musketeers engaging some Jaegers. The Musketeers unable to win that engagement, but it's going to allow time for these foot guards on top of the hill to rain hell down onto the Russian Jaegers, and only causing about half of them to be left. Over here, though, Prussian Fusiliers of the lines and Old Guard holding off well, and maybe they can get a reload volley and fire on these light dragoons, which are retreating from the battlefields. So hopefully they can get a volley in, and it looks like they will. Down to 12 guys now. Will they make it out is the question. They're going to be walking back to a defensive position, but they do end up breaking. So great job there by the French player. Actually depleting a ton of these Danish units. And the cavalry is definitely showing some weak signs, and a lot less of troops. As for on the far left flank though, Russians now getting desperate. They might be out of ammo, but they're going to be charging into the National Guard or militia. The militia should win this engagement, seeing that they are drastically outnumbered. And the Old Guard just waiting to go into combat, and these guys are very, very healthy. And they are just waiting for the order to push through the forest and towards the Russian positions. But as you can tell, two totally different types of playstyle. Looks like the French player is pushing up his light infantry to engage, meanwhile the Russian player is only pushing up his light infantry. So a lot more firepower for the French. And here we go, another cavalry charge, this time into the Young Guard. Young Guard now taking a beating, and here comes some Russian militia. Going to try and finish off this unit here in the forest. Young Guard trying their best to hold on, but we got some Semenosian Life Guards just outside. And they have some really good shots coming their way. So, Young Guard not expected to last much longer, and they do break. You can see now, got the French general being pushed up to the front lines, and it sounds like he's going to be charging. We will see if he can make it there, or will he die? It looks like they will form square. But he's going to be leading the way for the Old Guard, and it looks like these guys are going to get into melee combat. So, Old Guard engaging in pretty much 3 Grenadier units. And the question is, will they be able to break these guys? Actually, 4 units. Actually, 5. So, a 5-on-1, very healthy Old Guard unit. Already breaking those Norwegian ski troops. But the Young Guard just getting devastated in this forest. Russian militia causing a lot of chaos for these lines of the blue. Prussian troops, got the Prussian foot guards here. They're going to be engaging the Russian militia. As for on the far left flank, we have a melee engagement. Swiss foot up against some Russian Jaegers. He should win that engagement, but for some reason he's going to be retreating from that side of the battlefield. But a lot of chaos happening in this forest, and once again another Russian cavalry unit being sent in, trying to charge into units that can't form square. But look at this. General is dead. I think this is the Danish general that died. But soon after, the French general is dead. So both generals on the far left flank are gone. And as a result, it looks like the Danish are suffering much more morale shock than the French are. You see, breaking a ton of units. This Old Guard unit is just devastating these lines. So Grenadiers sending in some reinforcements now, and hopefully they can break the Old Guard. But the Old Guard looking very, very strong, not to mention another Old Guard unit countering some Dragoons. Dragoons down to 20 men. So things are looking very close on this flank, but it looks like numbers are just going to win out on this side. 27 men against probably maybe triple that. But on the far left flank, it looks like the Russians have been pushed back, and they're going to be reforming their lines. And they still have some very, very healthy units. As for the center, though, Russians getting very aggressive. And they're going to be pushing up very close. It looks like a meat shield unit for these Russian Jaegers. And they're going to be walking into the combat. Not even running, just walking into the combat. These foot guards going to get some excellent shots in before they can make it to their lines, and the Russian Jaegers do break. But luckily on this left flank, Russian Jaegers did make it into melee combat, but are about to break, and they do break on impact pretty much. So we have some foot guards now holding this forest, not to mention some Young Guard that are in square, but once again getting charged by some more mounted rifles. And just an endless stream of cavalry for the enemy forces. Looks like the Old Guard going to be engaging some more Dragoons out of square now. Morale is bad for both units, but who will break first is the question. 9 against 34, very close in terms of numbers. But it looks like the Old Guard do win out. As a result, though, we got more Danish troops being sent over. We got the Life Guard afoot and some Grenadiers, and hopefully they can take out the final French unit on that side of the battlefield. So the French are pretty much out of this game on the right flank, only down to an Old Guard unit and a Young Guard unit. But that does not mean they're going to fight to the end, and it looks like the Old Guard going in for a charge here. But will these Life Guards afoot get a volley in? And they will. Will they make it into melee combat? 21 men, 19-18. No, they will not. So easy victory there for the Danish, and the left flank, or right flank for the red team is getting very depleted. And by the looks of it, the French player is definitely concerned, so he's going to be shifting over his most elite troops, the Old Guard, over to the right flank, making sure it is secure and safe. You even have the Prussian general getting very close to the front lines, but these foot guards getting very low on numbers. Russian lines very thick. But look at these young guards just holding out despite the odds. And having a dead general is not good for either of these nations. Got the officer here just watching his men get killed and kill. Place your odds. Place your bets. Who's going to win this? Oh. So even though the young guard unit does break, the officer did manage to get a kill, but will he get shot in the back is the question. Oh. Officer better start running. Better make up his mind on where to go. So it looks like these guys are getting very close to engaging. But taking a look elsewhere on the map, looks like the Old Guard are now sent into the front lines. And they are raining hell down from this hill, actually engaging these Russian Jaegers. See the morale really starting to suffer. Ton of losses for these Russian Jaegers. And they do break, so Old Guards definitely being a relief force on this right flank. And they are getting some relief that they desperately need. So pretty much the Old Guard are going to be taking up the front lines. They're going to be holding back the Danish and the Russian forces. And I would say at this point in the battlefield, the blue team definitely outnumbers the red team. But still, on this left flank, quite a few reserves here. We got the 18th Regiment, the Brave, and some Swiss foot, not to mention some Guard Chasseurs and some regular Chasseurs in the back. So even though the red team did get a lot of good melee charges in with their cavalry, the blue team was much more defensive in their movements and were able to keep some cav in reserve. So smart move there. Cavalry can get very important towards the end of games, and that's just because with lower numbered troops, they aren't able to form square, and as a result, they're going to get charged into and break. But the Prussians and the French control the high ground, and that's going to be a crucial decision on who will win this engagement. You see that musketeer unit running for his life as they did get shot into, but once again, another Lifeguard Hussar unit charging into the National Guard or militia. And we do have some Swiss foot here. They are hidden, maybe waiting for a sneak attack on the enemy. Who knows? But once again, these guys causing a lot of damage. Swiss foot forming square now, seeing that the Russian cavalry getting very close. Very, very close to French lines. But it looks like the Guard Chasseurs are going to be sent into combat. They did get their shots off, causing some damage to the Russian cavalry, but nothing too significant. Over here though, the Danish, oh, we got the Russian general here. Will he make it out alive? Down to only 5 guys, but the Danish pretty much trapped themselves in this one building, and they're going to be facing 2 Old Guard units. So Old Guard up against a lot in this building, seeing that they are going to be an attacking force, but they do have some really healthy numbers. So they can take quite a beating before they do break, and going to start entering the courthouse, or courtyard. They need to break through this courtyard and get inside the house, because as of right now, they're getting shot from pretty much every direction. It looks like some are trickling into the building, but quite a few are stuck outside getting shot up right now. And look at that, another Old Guard unit. So the Danish player definitely feeling the heat, seeing that the most elite troops in Napoleon are being sent into this house. It's going to be a 3-on-4, and with these elite units that are so healthy, it's pretty inevitable as to what will happen. Old Guard just flooding the perimeter. Only a couple of Danish units remain in the courtyard. 1 left. Will he kill anyone? Oh, it looks like someone got shot. But the rest do make it to the house. Everyone is inside now. They're having a great time. The Old Guard very thirsty to get up on that 2nd floor. Looks like a lot of routing Danish troops. And only 1 unit remains, and that is the Grenadiers. So they're going to be hiding on the 2nd and 3rd floor, waiting to face their fate. And now the old guard coming up to the second and even the third floor. Let's take a look at this guy actually getting one kill. Let's see how well he does. Will he die is the question. His buddy getting killed. Can he avenge his friend? And yes, he will. So stabbing him straight through the heart. Getting a second kill. Kind of curious as to see how many kills he can get. Dodging the bayonet there. Oh, almost. Getting 3 kills. Great job there by that guy. But chaos is erupting pretty much everywhere else. Massive melee engagement. You see the old guard did claim that building. But the Russians getting very close to French positions. Pretty much in melee combat right now. And with the old guard being missing on this left flank, it's going to allow the Russians to try and capitalize on what they can. Trying to use the Russian melee skill to their advantage. Grenadiers in square formation. Taking out the Lancers. Not a bad volley at all. But this right flank barely holding on right now. We got the 18th Regiment and some Voltigeurs, militia and some Swiss foot up against some Life Guard of Foot, and some Moscow Musketeers. So extremely elite units for the Russians. But it seems like the left flank for the Russians is not as successful. A lot of routing Russian troops. And as a result, that is going to heavily influence the battle. Same as over here, Musketeers just getting overrun and down to only 1 unit. So things are getting very, very close. And those guys do break. So that's going to free up a lot of Prussian troops. They're going to be sent over to this flank. Not to mention the old guard on the move, running from the house. Still leaving the house after beating the Dutch and heading over to this side of the battle. So Grenadiers engaging the Swiss foot. 77 up against 29. Looks like the Grenadiers will win out in this engagement. But elsewhere, things are not looking good for the Russians. Great charge here by the French. Guard Shasheval getting a good melee charge in, but here goes the Moscow Musketeers trying to get into some melee combat. French are going to counter. 33 up against 57. And just like that, 24 up against 50. That Russian charge is just so deadly. And all we have right now holding this left flank intact for the French, are some militia. And here goes the Russian general charging in. But right now, only a few units holding back this massive horde of blue troops. We do have a line of infantry here. They're going to be engaging the old guards. They do need to start engaging soon, or else they're going to face a very bad fate. But they're going to get some kills into these old guard. Killing as many as they can, but once again, massive melee engagement by the Russians. The guard Shasheval taking a beating. Same with the general staff on both sides. The Russian general up against the French general. Only 3 guys left for the, Russian general. Will he make it out alive? And no, he will not. So the French general did make it out alive. And he's going to be engaging the Grenadiers. Meanwhile, the Russian general is dead. And that's going to influence the morale of these troops. Grenadiers and Life Guard of Foot being sent in. And there goes the French general. So once again, the odds are even. Seems like generals are just dying right after one of the generals do die. So Allied general dies and an enemy general dies. It's just crazy how things are working out this battle. But the Russians definitely outnumbered. I would say 10 to 2. That is some very bad odds for the Russians. But they are starting to close the gap. You can see one by one these units are starting to break, and this Russian morale is just barely holding on. Now the Prussian horde being sent in, not to mention the old guard. So now it is a 2-on-8. Not good at all. And severely outnumbered, but the Swiss foot might break. Once again, another old guard unit being pushed in and trying to end this battle. There goes the Swiss foot breaking from the battlefield. Look at this. Moscow Musketeers shooting the routing Swissfoot, having no mercy whatsoever. But there they go. So it's down to a 1, actually 2. We got a Grenadier unit in the back. They did come back from routing, and they do have some decent morale. But the poor Lifeguard's foot on this flank getting overrun. But once again, another unit breaking. Will the Russians be able to pull off a win is the question. It is definitely not looking good. And the Old Guard shooting their own men in the back. Not good, but now it is down to a 6v1. But the Grenadiers do need to get some shots off, and they might be able to engage these foot guards as they do cross over into their position. Grenadiers going to be forming up. Getting some good volleys in, but will it be enough to break these 2 foot guard units? You even have the Prussian general coming in, but look at that. Foot guards are breaking. And now it is up to the Prussian general up against some Russians. And there is the game. So very, very close matchup. And would you look at that, the Old Guard were victorious and did win the battle. So Bullet sent me in this replay. I tried to keep it a bit of a secret as to who sent me in this replay. Just keep you guys on your toes a little bit, and I think it worked out pretty well. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. But taking a look at the kills, Eric, one of the French players, 1,300 kills. Bullet, 1,300. Final French player, 1,100. As for the Russians, they did a really good job. This Russian player getting almost 1,500 kills, most kills in the entire game. Next up we have 1,300 kills by the Russian, and then by the Danish player, 1,100 kills. So taking a look at the unit statistics, foot guards on top for Bullet, getting 217 kills and only losing 104 men. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you have not already done so. And I have also linked in the description my Instagram, Discord, and Steam account, or Steam. If you guys want to give that a follow, I'm actually going to be doing a face reveal once I do break 100 followers on Instagram. So if you do have an account, make sure to follow me there and just, get one follower closer to seeing a face reveal. So that is pretty much all I have for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and that is pretty much it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys later.